We are breaking down 8 players that we are actively avoiding in fantasy drafts right now. Danny, let's get it kicked off with one that is mainly a structural thing, but nonetheless, I have drafted this guy very, very few times, and that is Trey McBride. The reason for that is because specifically on Underdog and also just in home leagues this year, I feel like going late round tight end is generally the meta. Like that's, to me, a profitable strategy given the, top heavy nature of running back and wide receiver this year. And second of all, I have George Kittle as my tight end too in my rankings. So George Kittle being a round and a half, almost 2 rounds less expensive
24 picks
than Trey McBride on Underdog results in me just never drafting Trey McBride. If I go through the 2v2s of George Kittle and Josh Jacobs, where Trey McBride goes, and Tyreek Hill, George Kittle as well, where Trey McBride goes, or Trey McBride plus Cortland Sutton, George Pickens, Joe Mixon, or Chuba Hubbard, I'm just never going to draft Trey McBride at that point.
Yeah, and I'll talk about another tight end that is actually just after this range later on in this video. But George Kittle is just the piece to me where, because of his current market value, it is completely impacting how I'm drafting my teams. I am drafting a little bit of McBride simply because if you have Cincinnati, obviously the game 17 correlation on Underdog, that's going to be stressed a little bit more. I don't want to have 0% McBride because I think he's a very good player. But at the same time, like you said, if I'm in one draft from an opportunity cost perspective, I can't take a similar projection to a guy like George Kittle, 24 picks before George Kittle. That's really what it comes down to. I think you can even extend that to Brock Bowers. Obviously, you don't want to miss out if he has a special, legendary year or two on a guy like Bowers as well. But it just goes back structurally from a macro perspective. We're not clicking these names because Kittle is just so damn free.
Yeah, and from a best ball standpoint, I'm building a lot of 3 tight end builds of, Tyler Warren, Cade Otton, Tucker Kraft, or something. Like David Njoku, Dalton Schultz, Terrence Ferguson. Like I'm just totally fine building out tight end rooms like that when you can take 3 stabs at the position. And when it comes to home leagues, I still think that maybe you're going to get a better value on Trey McBride because he's not going to go right at that 2-3 turn because nobody's worried about week 17 correlation.
His ADP is there though in home leagues.
Okay. So even in home leagues, he's going this high. I just think that you're better off starting your draft with 7-8 wide receivers and running backs combined. And then once those positions dry up, then you attack your quarterback position. Then you attack your tight end position. Unless I'm getting a screaming value on a tight end or a quarterback early. And to me, the only real guy that I'm clicking is George Kittle because I think he's a screaming value right now. I'm okay just drafting CJ Stroud, Dak Prescott, Tucker Kraft and David Njoku and kind of just figuring it out after that. I've spent all my high draft capital on running backs and wide receivers. Ergo, I should be good at those positions for the most part. I can line my bench with upside swings, which is what we talk about all the time from a redraft standpoint, except instead of my upside swings being handcuff running backs and young wide receivers and stuff, they're actually trying to solidify every week starters at the onesies.
Yeah, especially on Underdog, given the steep hill I've noticed in flex talent between, round 9 on versus the first 8 rounds. Just as a philosophy for me, typically speaking, I can only afford myself a 1 onesie pick in the first 7 or 8 rounds, just because I've noticed that the running back and wide receiver talent on my rosters simply don't look good if I over-invest in the onesies early. So, if the opportunity cost, like you said, it's Trey or opportunity bundles, like you said, if it's Trey McBride plus Cortland Sutton versus George Kittle plus, insert a running back in that range, insert a wide receiver in that range. Like maybe you are a Bucky Irving guy, maybe you're a Chase Brown guy, Josh Jacobs. There's running backs and receivers in that area. Lab McConkey, for example, might go there in home leagues. To me, why would you not take the flex player early? And then if you want an elite tight end, just wait.
Yeah, and again, in home leagues, round 6, 7, 8, 9, probably going to be a little bit better running back and wide receiver wise because people generally like to get their quarterbacks and their tight ends, especially if you're in a casual home league. People go, I have 3 running backs and 3 wide receivers now. It's time to draft my quarterback and my tight end. Like people draft like that in home leagues and you might get some better values at wide receiver and running back, but specifically on Underdog, it's almost impossible for me to click Trey McBride right now.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, again, if I have a Jamar Chase or a T. Higgins, I'll mix him in, or Chase Brown just for that week 17 implication. But it's more so just I don't want to end up with 0% McBride. Like even if it's 4 to 6% because he's a good player, I'd rather be slightly under market on him because there is the possibility if he gets touchdown equity this year on that offense, he could be the tight end one. It's just like you said, George Kittle could also be the tight end one.
Yeah, and from a micro perspective, too, I do think that Marvin will probably take a step forward this year. I do think that Kyler and the Cardinals' offense is generally just sometimes hard to trust on a week-to-week basis and whatnot. So it's not that I don't like the projection. I do. I'm not enamored with the projection enough to deviate away from what I feel is good structurally. So what are you looking at as your first player you're avoiding here?
We don't hate players. We hate prices. That's McBride to a T. I think we could both agree he's a stud of a player.
Yeah. If he was going in the fourth round like Kittle, I'd probably draft him.
Exactly. And I mean, technically speaking, I had this guy listed fourth, but keeping the theme of the tight ends just from a macro structure perspective, like you have Trey McBride, obviously tight end 2 off the board because of George Kittle. Sam LaPorta is that player for me. He's going off the board, tight end 4, 72.4. I don't think on a surface level perspective, 72.4 is an outrageous, egregious ADP for LaPorta. It's just more so, like I said, the macro strategy that I would rather either spend up for a George Kittle or spend up for a top 3 tight end or punt to the War and Njoku craft range in my drafts. And realistically, if we want to play the 2v2s game like we did with McBride, would you rather Judkins plus Njoku or Sam LaPorta plus Bashal Tutin? To me, the answer is always going to be Judkins and Njoku.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's 60 receptions, 726, and 7 touchdowns. You telling me Tyler Warren can't do that this year? That's what LaPorta did last year with Ben Johnson and the number 1 scoring offense in the league. Jameson Williams taking a huge step forward last year was really bad news for Sam LaPorta. And it resulted in him going from the tight end 3 in fantasy points per game to the tight end 8. And honestly, tight end 8 even maybe overrates what he did. Like, he didn't feel like an every week starter, which usually
our bus guy
tight end does kind of feel like an every week starter. So yeah, I think LaPorta is a great player. I think he's a good young player that you feel pretty confident investing in. And yeah, I do have him ranked tight end 4, and I think he probably should be ranked the tight end 4. It's just that, like, there is absolutely no difference to me between him and the tight end 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 guys. Like, it's a massive tier.
And you could realistically group the middle tier of tight end right now. I would say, like, even LaPorta, as much as I love TJ Hawkinson, his sleeper ADP's 55.8, for example, never draft even Hawkinson there. Travis Kelce, 74, Jonnu Smith, 76. Like, to me, there's nothing concretely standing out of their projections versus, like we said, Njoku at 99, Warren at 101.5, Colson Loveland at 111. Like, there's just comparably cheaper tight ends that I would rather wait on.
Yeah, like, again, even if you have to punt all the way to the Goddard, Jake Ferguson area, like, I feel confident doing that at tight end, especially on Underdog, where you can draft 3 of them and just kind of ping pong weeks and hope that you draft the right combination of who had the good weeks when the other guys have bad weeks, kind of thing. Because this position is just a complete and utter train wreck after the top guys. And also too, like, when you're drafting a guy this high, like LaPorta or McBride, especially McBride given his price, but LaPorta too, like, you're spending a 6th round pick on the guy. He's kind of got to, like, be a top 3 lock. Like, he can't be a tight end 6 in points per game, or it's a complete whiff of a draft pick.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're going to have to make that decision. He is going off the board. I mentioned 72.4 on Underdog, a lot more attainable of a price there. On Sleeper, he is within 10 picks of George Kittle, 51 ADP. For reference, to take him at 51 overall, Corey, you would need to be taking him over Devontae Smith. You need to take him over Xavier Worthy, Jameson Williams, for example. I'd rather.
I'm not doing over Devontae Smith. Like, it's literally never happening.
Like any of these receivers. I mean, like, why is he going in Sleeper ADP ahead of his teammate Jameson Williams? I'm not a big JMO guy. What are we doing here?
Yeah, no, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that he'd be going that high. Like, I went through a random rant Twitter thread where I'm like, dude, if you hit on 3 guys that give you decent production last year, like, let's say you grabbed K. Otten, Tucker Kraft, Zach Ertz, you were fine at tight end, like, totally fine.
Yeah, it's about spotting the opportunity cost, especially in Underdog when you can make 3 tight end bills. Like, you end off a draft with Noah Gray. What if he has 3 usable weeks because Kelce got hurt? You know what I mean? Like, especially from an Underdog perspective, I'm never going to make that investment on a guy that's not giving me potential needle moving production.
Yeah, and home leagues, it matters a little bit more because you have to decide who to start every single week. But even when in leagues that are managed leagues, I think the advantage of hitting, like, because if you take 2 swings or 3 swings late in your draft and you drafted 2 years ago Sam LaPorta and Luke Musgrave, well, then you hit on an every week starter with one of those picks, and you're going to just, like, 10x your chances of winning that league because you didn't have to draft an early round tight end. And because we had a pretty decent group of rookie tight ends this year, and we have a couple decent 2nd-year tight ends as well, I just feel like drafting a bunch of young breakout candidates and maybe backfilling with a Dallas Goedert in case it doesn't work out just makes so much sense to me.
It's hilarious you quoted those exact two tight ends, Musgrave and LaPorta, because literally in my home league 2 years ago in LaPorta's rookie year, those were the two tight ends I ended my draft with in the last 2 rounds.
Yeah, well, and I said in our sleeper video, I remember that year, I said two sleepers that didn't make the list were the rookie tight ends, because I feel other than Kincaid, who was going high in drafts, you can draft LaPorta, Michael Mayer, Luke Musgrave, some of those guys, and just draft two of them and see what happens. And LaPorta ended up being the correct answer, and he finishes a top 3 tight end that year, and he was an every week starter at non-every week starter prices, which is a huge advantage at this position. So speaking of the Detroit Lions, because you made obviously reference to them with Sam LaPorta, his teammate Jameson Williams, I'm just not drafting. And it is specific to underdog price tag, 43.5 overall ADP, wide receiver 24. On Sleeper, he's 58th overall, and I think in the mid 30s or the early 30s of ADP. So it's a little bit more stomachable at that point, especially in big play bonus type of leagues that I play in. He has a little bit more value, but to me, he belongs around the other number twos, Jordan Addison, Jalen Waddle, Rome Odunze. And he doesn't belong near the great number twos like Devontae Smith to me. He should be further down the board, like with the Addison, Waddles, and Odunze's.
Well, I said Pickens. I more so meant like after the range of Pickens. Like realistically, like you said, the Devontae Smith range, Xavier Worthy's probably going to go there in home leagues. George Pickens is probably going to go. Like to me, when I'm looking at the upside case for Jameson Williams, like he was so efficient on a per target basis, but he to me is the one that's the biggest loser of the Ben Johnson leaving situation, because he was the most efficient receiver in the league last year. Ben Johnson absolutely had a fact on that. And yeah, you could look at it in the fact, well, he finally broke out. He looked efficient. We should be betting on those type of projections on a year-to-year basis in case they potentially get more volume. To me, though, when I'm looking at the insulation of that situation, a 34-point per game offense, losing their offensive coordinator, who was the hottest head coach on the market, like Amon St. Brown isn't the loser of the situation. Jahmyr Gibbs is not the loser of the situation. To me, it's Sam LaPorta and it's Jameson Williams, because they are the tertiary weapons in this offense.
Wan'Dale Robinson had 51 more targets than Jameson Williams last year, which is
maybe he shouldn't have, but hey,
he shouldn't have. But like 91 targets and a 19% target share, just like it gets it done, and you can finish as a top 24 wide receiver on the season when you're as efficient as he was, led the NFL in yards per reception, had 1,000 receiving yards on just 58 catches, 7 receiving touchdowns. Obviously, great schemed open, big plays that won people weeks. Like the spike weeks alone with Jameson Williams were he paid off at his cost, especially from like a best ball standpoint. It's just like, man, the Detroit Lions were by far and away the best offense in football last year. Not to mention, too, they had so many defensive injuries that they had to score a lot of points and were in so many shootouts as a result of it. And their defense is going to come back healthy. And they had a very young secondary last year that could get better. So I just generally think that the offense of the Detroit Lions, for a number of different factors, whether it's the scheme, Ben Johnson leaving, the defensive injuries, the fact that they just might naturally regress down to a top 5 offense instead of the clear best offense in the NFL. It's just really hard to click the button on Jameson Williams unless you're getting him in the 5th, in the 6th round where he goes on sleeper. Underdog ADP, where he's going around true number ones like DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton, Zay Flowers, better number twos like Travis Hunter and Devontae Smith. I just can't get there. ARSB is going to ball. He is the number 1 receiver there. LaPorta and J-Mo are going to split what's left over. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery is kind of the engine of the offense there. Great best ball guy in theory. And I think everybody's counter argument to Jameson Williams was, okay, well, like on a best ball standpoint, who has a higher weekly ceiling than this guy? Dude, Marvin Mims goes in the 12th round with a high weekly ceiling. Weekly ceiling should not get you in the 4th round. Like this is what we did with Gabe Davis a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean, he's a full round ahead of the same process play, which is Jalen Waddle, except Jalen Waddle's shown a year where he had 1,300 yards. I'm not even the biggest Jalen Waddle proponent, but to me, what is the difference in projection between those two? And why is there an 11 pick discrepancy right now between them?
He's fancy Alec Pierce, man. Alec Pierce has big play upside in the 16th round. Like, why are we giving Jameson Williams this? Oh, he has this great ceiling on a weekly basis. Like, so do a lot of players on a weekly basis.
Shout out Bindles. I know he tweeted yesterday. It caught a lot of flack from the community because, of course, it will when people or when you make a tweet like maybe referencing a negative stat of somebody that the market likes, because the market does like Jameson Williams. They're like, oh,
I don't get why, but they do. Yeah.
So he tweeted out the stat lines of Jaden Reed and Jameson Williams. And it's like the office
human
meme.
resource man,
Yeah.
meme or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And their numbers were like identical. And people were like, oh, but like Jaden Reed, he doesn't get targets. It's like, well, Jameson Williams does. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, dude, I'll take Jaden Reed on 75% of the snaps all day. I have Jaden Reed ranked over Jameson Williams, and he goes 3.5 rounds later on Underdog.
34 picks in ADP later.
Yeah, no, it's insane, man. Like, anyways, we can get into your guy who, there's going to be a lot of these that we agree on in this video. I actually disagree with this one. I'll let you obviously make the anti-Jonathan Taylor case here. I'll tell you why I'm actually kind of in on him at his price, but go ahead.
It comes back to the fact that when you look at the range of running backs for me, you have Jonathan Taylor with that 21 ADP. I have respectively ranked over him Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown, Breece Hall, and I would have Kyron one spot after them. So when you're just looking at the overall valuation there, I'm not clicking the Jonathan Taylor button quite often. People obviously know he was a big-time winner. If you made it to the semifinal and the final last year, you probably won it if you had Jonathan Taylor. However, 92.4 of his 246.7 seasonal PPR points came between week 16 to 18, which is about 38% of his seasonal production. Going into the fantasy playoffs, so weeks 1 to 15, actually including the first round of the fantasy playoffs, he was a 13.8 point per game scorer, ended up finishing at 17.5. For reference, the difference there, RB7 at that 17.5 figure, RB21 at that 13.8 figure. And again, he ran hard on big plays. Obviously, he will do that. Jonathan Taylor's a good enough runner to be able to break off open plays, but I do have some question marks. Again, you're a little bit higher on the offense than me. I think this is at best probably about an average offensive projection. And on top of that, you're going to make the case for his receiving production. But if we're going to hype up Josh Downs, if we're going to hype up Michael Pittman, if we're going to hype up Tyler Warren, I just don't really see a lot of meat left on the bone for Jonathan Taylor to command volume in the passing game. And realistically, when I'm looking at it, it's a running back that I don't think is going to catch a ton of passes on what I believe to be an average offense, when there are running backs after him that either have more touchdown equity on better offenses or better projectable overall receiving workloads. And to me, when you're looking at it, Bucky Irving, for example, very efficient, obviously attached to the Buccaneers offense, scoring equity, receiving equity. Josh Jacobs, I think he's the same process play as Jonathan Taylor, except I trust the Packers offense more than I do the Colts. And Josh Jacobs was literally a 20-plus point per game scorer down the stretch for the last half of the season last year. Chase Brown, if he does get the workload like he got week 8 on last year, he was literally the RB1 in expected points per game. And when you look at the full round cheaper guys, Breece Hall, for example, I think there's 200-plus carry, 90-plus target upside. Kyron Williams, again, I would take Jonathan Taylor over Kyron Williams, but it's a close enough projection to me that it doesn't merit the 12.5 pick discrepancy in ADP for me. So really what it comes down to is when I have those alternative options, I'm just not clicking the Jonathan Taylor button quite often.
Yeah, there's a lot back and forth with Jonathan Taylor that I do like generally, what he brings to the table, because, from a best ball standpoint, he goes at 21 overall, which I actually agree is a little bit high. I have him around the 2-3 turn. And the only things I really disagree with that you said is Anthony Richardson is awful. Like, he is a horrible quarterback and he is not going to start. And I've been very vocal that I think Daniel Jones will start the entire year and will be probably a big upgrade over what Shane Steichen and the Colts have dealt with, because Shane Steichen and the Colts have been the 10th and 17th highest scoring offense in the NFL, with Gardner Minshew, Anthony Richardson, and Joe Flacco as the quarterbacks. Daniel Jones, 2022, last time he was fully healthy before the injury, led the NFL in accuracy percentage. Like, he's a good enough passer to get the ball to Josh Downs, to Michael Pittman, to Adonai Mitchell and Alec Pierce, and hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, in the 5 games that Joe Flacco started last year, a functional passing quarterback, also had 4, 4, 2, 4, and 5 targets as well, which I'm not saying he's going to get great target volume because Flacco's pretty immobile, but I'm saying he probably gets a little bit of a bump than when he was with Richardson. And generally, I think the actual upgrade here for Jonathan Taylor is that the offense is better. Daniel Jones can bring this offense to a top 10 to 15 scoring unit. Like, honestly, I really do think this offense can be really good. And I'm targeting all the Colts players in the passing game actively. So I must be in on Jonathan Taylor near his cost as well, because he's going to be a huge beneficiary of this. And from a best ball standpoint, we know what he can do. He has monster weekly upside, as we saw down the stretch there. And that's kind of partially why his best ball cost is overinflated, because you see that 39.8 game in week 16.
It happened in the time of the year that people will remember.
In week 17. Like, when you have that type of weekly ceiling at running back, it's part of it is too because he had an 88.4% opportunity share last year, which led all running backs. And maybe DJ Giddens impacts that a little bit, but I do think you're still getting like a workhorse, like a 300 carry, 50 to 60 target workhorse.
I don't see 50 to 60 targets. Like you mentioned, I do think DJ Giddens should work into the passing game comparatively to what they had in terms of their alternatives last year. On top of that, this is probably going to be an 11 personnel based team. Yes, you had Tyler Warren, but your best receiver is your slot receiver. Like Josh Downs isn't going to play 50+% of his snaps on the outside. So in order to get him on the field, you're going to have to play a lot of 11 personnel. On top of that, Michael Pittman's fully healthy off of that back injury that kind of limited him throughout the year. Maybe A.D. Mitchell takes a step. Obviously, Alec Pierce, the most, I mentioned Jameson Williams is the most efficient receiver in the league. Actually, Jameson Williams was the second most efficient receiver in the league because Alec Pierce had nearly 900 receiving yards on 37 receptions last year. So
yeah, I said JMO led the NFL in yards per reception. Alec Pierce had 5 more yards per reception than him.
Yeah, overlook that one. But the fact that I think it was 22 yards per reception that Pierce was at, absolutely insane efficiency. I just think the overall collection of pass catching weapons, Tyler Warren, like I just mentioned, I think DJ Giddens, even if he's not fully there from a cerebral perspective to take a bunch of the brunt carries between the tackles, what I think he can do is offer some third down utility, be used in space. Obviously, very good athletic profile, 210 pounds, 4.43 level speed. To me, you draft DJ Giddens so that Jonathan Taylor doesn't have to get overused in the passing game because you need him to run the ball between the tackles.
Yeah, which I agree with. I actually think that Jonathan Taylor and Bucky Irving are quite similar projection-wise because both guys have great receivers around them and a quarterback who can kind of just distribute the football and stuff. The difference why I have Taylor ranked, and the only guy that I have ranked that you listed over Jonathan Taylor is Josh Jacobs because I feel like he's just a little bit safer and gets a little bit more of a receiving workload, and I believe in the offense more. But Jonathan Taylor to me is my RB9 because he is just going to benefit from Downs, Pittman, Mitchell, Pierce stretching the field, giving him a lot of open space. Warren's a great blocker who they bring in too. So I think the offense in general is going to be good, and I'm targeting all the Colts.
No, I think that's reasonable. One of the big fundamental disagreements I would say between why I would have Taylor lower versus you is that I think Chase Brown is more likely to get his workload that he finished with last year than you are. And on top of that, with Breece Hall specifically, I just think that the receiving work will get him over the line. But I'm not saying it's egregious to have Jonathan Taylor ahead of those guys, just more so because those guys are cheaper and I have them ranked higher. Jonathan Taylor's not the guy I'm clicking quite often.
Yeah, and I have Bucky Irving at 10, Chase Brown at 11, and Breece Hall at 12, and they're all in the same tier as Jonathan Taylor for me. I just have him at the head of that tier, I believe.
Yep, very reasonable. But we talk about JT. We can go on to your next player here, and a little bit contentious. Obviously, goes to a situation that people had as the number 1 running back landing spot going into the draft. The issue, though, is maybe the prospect profile himself was kind of overdrafted, and the community is kind of valuing him as if he was an Omar Hampton, as if he was a Quinshon Judkins, as if he was, a top 4 level running back talent. RJ Harvey's going off the board as the 58th overall pick at Underdog, 19th at the running back position. Let's take it away with him.
Yeah, he's gone down a few picks since J.K. Dobbins signed. I believe he was going near 51, 52 or so when J.K. Dobbins, before he got there. And to be fair, I do think his ADP could slide more. And in home leagues, I think he'll probably go more. So like 58 overall, we're talking about, a late 5th round pick or whatever. Like that's what we're talking about in this range. I think that in home leagues, you might get him in the 7th or the 8th round, which is probably great value at that point. But on Underdog, he's being drafted over Alvin Kamara, Trevion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins at minimum. And to me, those are mistakes. I would take him, all 3 of those guys over RJ Harvey comfortably. And I actually have him ranked below Isaiah Pacheco, Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Brian Robinson, and Aaron Jones. Now I realize you probably don't have him ranked that way, and I'm probably on an island there. Yeah. But I just think that J.K. Dobbins is a really good back, man. The pros are still great for RJ Harvey. He had really good film. He was a solid prospect, and running backs kind of don't matter to some degree, and the scheme is really good. Sean Payton's running backs were 5th in total targets or something last year. It's a great offense. Bo Nix is probably going to check the ball down quite a bit because he's a rather conservative quarterback. But J.K. Dobbins was a top 18 running back in points per game last year. He was a top 15 running back before he got injured. So it's not like they added Nick Chubb, who's washed at this point. J.K. Dobbins was legit a difference-making fantasy asset 1 year ago on a very similar situation where RJ Harvey comes in as what we expect to be the starter, and J.K. Dobbins, as soon as week 1, took over Gus Edwards' role. So I think this is probably going to end up being a backfield committee of sorts. I don't know exactly who's going to get the edge. I don't know if anybody ever wins this backfield out, But my inclination in this backfield is to take the cheapest option, which is J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable to do. Now, if Harvey does slip a little bit, like you said, in home leagues, I'm willing to take him there. But really what it comes back to for me is Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins specifically. I actually do like their landing spots. Quinshon Judkins, yeah, sure, the offense is not a good projection. I think I made a good case for him on the 10 players we can't stop drafting video. But to me, when I'm looking at the prospect profiles that they were, the prospect grades that we had on them, on top of the access to receiving work for Henderson, the access to a big-time workload for Judkins right away, I just don't know why the market prefers an inferior prospect to them.
Yeah, and Harvey, for what it's worth, is 61 on Sleeper. So he's going right around the same range in home leagues as well, given what the projection is. I mean, it's pretty easy when you think about it. It's like, oh, Denver Broncos, great rushing scheme. Boneck's going to throw the ball to him a lot, and he was a good prospect. It's like, yeah, he's probably going to get elevated to a 5th, 6th round pick at that point in time. But I can definitely make the argument that him and Travion Henderson are going to have very similar roles, very similar caliber of offense, in my opinion, in terms of the quarterbacks that play there and all that kind of stuff. Henderson was a way better prospect. So that's the tiebreaker for me. And then you also have Judkins, who I think will get more volume than both of them, even if his offense is not nearly as good. And as you and I talked about, I mean, the Browns were the worst offense in the NFL last year and produced a top 24 wide receiver and a top 5 tight end when he was healthy. I think having a decent run game and a good scheme and a good offensive line and a good coach, they're going to be just fine. So for me, I'm just not drafting RJ Harvey simply because A, I like the receivers in that range. B, I like the running backs that go a little bit later, a little bit better. And C, I would rather take his teammate J.K. Dobbins in the 14th, 15th round.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's reasonable. Dobbins was obviously efficient last year. Now, did fall off down the stretch, kind of worn out, but you're not drafting him to be a workhorse running back.
No,
you're
he was
drafting
top 15 running back in PPR points per game when he got injured. That is difference-making production.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. And Dobbins, like you said, if he's going to be a 13th round pick, I just think I'd rather get my exposure to this Denver backfield. The Denver backfield that I do want exposure of because I do trust Sean Payton. I do trust the utility of that position historically, but people are overcasting RJ Harvey right now. People are saying, okay, he's going to be this 3-down workhorse for Sean Payton. And really another thing too, like people were saying, oh, well, he's just going to be a straight receiving back. Well, he wasn't a great pass blocker. And as a receiver, like he was a fine receiver, but I don't think it was like the major strength of his game. The major strength of his game in college was that he was so damn elusive. There's a very real possibility that J.K. Dobbins actually does take 3rd down snaps because he's such a good pass blocker. Well,
yeah, and from a talent standpoint, these are the guys I had ranked around RJ Harvey pre-draft. DJ Giddens, Devin Neal, Damian Martinez. Like we're talking late day 3 guys that went late day 3, like Dylan Sampson, day 3 guy. Like it's not like RJ Harvey should have went in a 2nd round. He shouldn't have. He should have went in the 3rd or the 4th round. Given that Devin Neal and Damian Martinez went in the 6th and the 7th round, he probably should have went in the 5th round. So for me, it's like, yeah, he had good film, but he was kind of overdrafted.
Yeah. Which, again, not a problem. Sean Payton got his guy, but also we just got to look at it objectively that, I mean, if he goes out there and he outproduces Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, I'd be willing to take my L. I just simply didn't see that from all 3 of their respective prospect profiles.
Yeah, I will take my exposure through Dobbins, and I will eat my L if I'm wrong on this, and I will take Judkins and Henderson instead because they were way better throughout their college career and much better prospects.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I can move on to my 3rd player here. And look, I get it. I'm a Cowboys fan. People are going to hear this right off the bat. They're going to be like, well, you're talking negative about a Washington player. Of course you don't like Terry McLaurin. It's like, well, when he's going as the wide receiver 17, 30th overall on Underdog, I'm not going to take much Terry McLaurin. According to Hayden Winks, he scored 7 more touchdowns than expected in 2024. Expected touchdown rate, he was expected to score 6 touchdowns. He ended up scoring 13. Now, obviously, Jaden Daniels, good quarterback. Like we expect him to be an efficient player, but Terry McLaurin was the wide receiver 36 in expected half PPR points per game, according to Hayden Winks. And again, I like the player, but outside of his touchdowns, you look at his season as a whole, his 2024 production really mirrors any of his other years in terms of receptions, in terms of targets, in terms of receiving yards. Terry McLaurin, the only difference this past year was the overall touchdown equity that he had. The problem that I have with that is Washington adds Deebo Samuel. And Deebo Samuel, again, you can question how much of a target commander he is at this point of his career, how efficient he is, between the 20 situation. What you cannot argue about Deebo Samuel is that when they get inside the red zone, he is very much a threat to touch the football, and he is very much a threat to score the football. Terry did not win on volume last year. Again, 117 targets, 23.3% target share. Like, those are both very low for a team's wide receiver 1. So if Samuel's now going to take some valuable red zone touches, maybe some carries inside the 5, maybe some screen passes. Obviously, we've seen the array of usage from Deebo Samuel in the last few years when teams go down to the red zone, when the 49ers have gone down to the red zone. I'm hesitant to say, this 29-year-old receiver is all of a sudden going to command an alpha level share of this offense. So to me, again, this offense is good. I want shares of the Washington Commanders. I'm just more so doing it through Deebo, through Daniels, and through the 2 running backs.
Yeah, I think that's the key for me on, the Broncos were the same kind of conversation because I'm not drafting a whole lot of Sutton either. It's more just that I think that Terry McLaurin is the best receiver on the team. I think that Jaden Daniels obviously is good at his price and whatnot. I just would rather get my exposure through the offense through Deebo Samuel, Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, maybe take a late shot on Zach Ertz or Ben Sinnott or whatever. I just don't feel the need to draft Terry McLaurin where he goes. And also too, there's zero planet in which I'm taking him over Tyreek Hill, who is the receiver that goes immediately in front of him. And there's also zero planet in which I take him over Mike Evans, who's the receiver that goes immediately after him, and Devontae Adams in the same range. So it's just not going to happen. Like Terry McLaurin, like you said, is a consistent 1,006 touchdown season. And he was expected to have a 1,006 touchdown season. He just happened to run extremely hot on touchdowns. And I'm actually curious if his splits came because the other thing too is that Brian Robinson missed a lot of time. He was banged up in a number of different games. I wonder if McLaurin's big touchdown performances happened when Brian Robinson was out of the lineup or banged up, because when I think about Brian Robinson's role on that team, pretty much all he does is score touchdowns for them. That's kind of where his value comes from. And Terry McLaurin had 1.33 touchdowns per game in the three games that Brian Robinson missed.
Yeah, no, pretty funny when you contextualize that. On top of that, you look at how he finished the year. Now, obviously, Washington caught hot at the end of the season, but we're looking between weeks 12 and 18. He played the Cowboys, very, very banged up by that point. The Tennessee Titans tanking for the first pick. New Orleans dumpster fire down the stretch. Obviously, the Eagles were a good competition piece. I'm not arguing that. And then another harder matchup against Atlanta. He produced 1 catch for 5 yards on 7 targets. In that stretch, week 12 on, 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, no touchdowns, 1 touchdown. It's well, that's how you get to a 13 touchdown figure. At the week 11 point, he had 6 touchdowns on the year and scored 7 of his touchdowns literally weeks 12 to 18. He scored a touchdown per game in that stretch. Yeah,
and B-Rob was healthy, at the beginning of the year, and he wasn't healthy at the end of the year. Yeah. And they were kind of pivoting towards
Eckler had a concussion.
Yeah, Eckler had a concussion, right? They were on to Chris Rodriguez running the football at that point in the year. So I think the run game being a little healthier would probably also go a long way in kind of stifling his touchdown production. It's not that I dislike Terry McLaurin. I just think that he should be going in the 4th, 5th round where he always goes, instead of in the 3rd round at the 2-3 turn where he's going. On both sleeper ADP and underdog, he's going at pick 31. So I just think that's too early.
Yeah, it's just, again, I understand if PPR, people want to fill out their wide receiver position. I get it. It's just we have to consider opportunity cost. If I can get a league winner at running back where Terry's going, or on sleeper specifically, this isn't available on underdog, but on sleeper specifically, I can get Rashee Rice 10 picks after Terry McLaurin. I'm just not drafting Terry McLaurin at all.
Yeah, and the receivers that go immediately after Terry McLaurin, even on sleeper, Garrett Wilson, Mike Evans, Marvin Harrison, Devontae Adams, Rashee Rice, and then you get into the flatter tier of the Metcalfs and the Suttons and the DJ Moores of the world. So again, to me, I'm just very rarely clicking the button. And the other thing too is at running back, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, and Chase Brown go right around Terry McLaurin as well, which is just I'm not doing that. I'm just not doing that.
It's funny. It kind of plays into our video yesterday, but keep in mind, George Kittle goes 48th on underdog. Could you guarantee me next year that Terry McLaurin will have a better receiving line than George Kittle?
No, I can't guarantee you that, because
George Kittle, get it at tight end.
Yeah, George Kittle already produced the same amount of points per game last year at a position in tight end where it's way, more scarce of who's good.
Exactly. So to me, it's you're getting that at tight end for cheaper than what Terry McLaurin's currently going.
Yeah. And speaking of George Kittle and the 49ers, my last player that I'm not drafting is Jauan Jennings. There's a guy every year, it feels where he wasn't good before and now he's good and we kind of elevate him. He's just really hard to click for me. In home leagues, he goes near pick 95. So I want to preface it really quick that this is specifically an underdog take, 63 overall ADP. 95th overall ADP on home leagues. If he's an 8th round pick, I think that's fine. He is not an 8th round pick. He's an early 6th round pick on Underdog. He was great last year in points per game with 14.0. However, he had a 46-point game against the Rams. That was like majority of that. And he was wide receiver 36 after that game. So if you thought after that Rams game, every week starter going forward, because Ayuk also tore his ACL like a week or two later, he wasn't that good. Wide receiver 36 is not needle moving production. Deebo Samuel was out, hurt, sick, whatever. Ayuk gone for the year. CMC out for the year. Pearsall in and out of the lineup and being a rookie. And Kittle was pretty much the only guy that they had other than Jennings. We're drafting this guy basically at where he produced last year, and everything went right for him. Everything went right for him. Brandon Ayuk will likely be back at week 5 at the latest. Pearsall is going to be healthy, and I would prefer him, to be honest, as far as like which receiver I'm drafting of these two. George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey still there as well, and McCaffrey back healthy to be the engine of the offense. Jennings' career high in PPR finish before last year was wide receiver 84. And he finished as a top 24 guy last year at 28 years old. He had a breakout season. So I get it. He finally got some opportunity. He did the most with his opportunity and that kind of thing. My point is, you draft Jauan Jennings in the 5th, 6th round to come in 5th place in your best ball pod. You do not draft him to win first, second, and then go on to the next round. I just think he's a low ceiling option. I think he's probably guaranteed top 45 wide receiver projection this year. I don't see any way he does what he did last year and be a top 24 guy.
Hey, Corey, so you mean to tell me you're not drafting him over Chris Godwin and Chris Olave?
No way. No way. Why would I draft him over those guys? There's no chance, because those guys are legit needle-moving target earners when they're on the field.
Yeah, I just had to make the play. I agree, especially on Underdog now. I'm curious to see what his sleeper ADP, because to me,
95.
Okay, so in sleeper, you're getting him at 95, a lot more reasonable. You want to take your shot on the 49ers offense there, be my guess. 63 overall on Underdog is just, it's too much of a price to have to pay. Like you said, I'd rather go cheaper. I mean, him and Pearsall virtually coin flip bets. I would rather just take the ADP value on Pearsall there. Yeah, sure, I am nervous about Brandon Ayuk starting on the pup, being injured, but to me, I would rather take the implied upside when he comes back of Brandon Ayuk than him. And on top of that, like you said, I'm getting my exposure through Kittle, through McCaffrey. I have both those guys aggressively ranked over where consensus has them. If I can avoid this wide receiver core as a whole, because I don't really feel confident in any of these three, I would just rather get my Niners exposure through McCaffrey and through Kittle.
Yeah, I mean, the right answer to me is just draft George Kittle everywhere. Like, when I look at where I have the Niners receivers ranked relative to consensus, I'm right in line with consensus on Ayuk, because I do think if you trust your ability to draft and you want that, back end of the season.
As your wide receiver 5, sure.
Yeah, I think Ayuk is the best pick on the board, specifically for best ball tournaments on Underdog. In home league, managed league ADP and sleeper, they're all going around the same pick. It's 91 Ayuk, 95 Jennings, 100 Pearsall. So you kind of have to make a decision based on your league format at that point. Am I going to take the implied upside of Ayuk? Am I going to take the guaranteed production potentially of Jauan Jennings, wide receiver 3 type of production? Or am I going to take the breakout candidate and Ricky Pearsall? And I think it would probably depend on how shallow your league is. If you play in a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, I'm taking Ayuk every single time and not thinking twice about it, or Pearsall potentially as well. And if you play in like a deeper, start 10 kind of redraft league, then you'd maybe take Jauan Jennings at that point. But for me, I have a hard time clicking him. I have him ranked 3rd among the wide receivers on the 49ers, and he goes first by a lot.
Yeah, no, definitely should not be going first. Jauan Jennings, like you said, very murky profile. I will give him flowers. He was very efficient last year. I think that's why people are making the case. Okay,
he was a spike week guy too, which is impacting the best ball ADP.
I get that. It's just, to me, that it's too much of a volatile bet at that point. I mean, if you're going to inherit risk with Jennings, why not inherit risk on the guy that was the wide receiver 2 in value over replacement last year, receiver Chris Godwin, who goes after him?
I think he should be going where Michael Pittman goes. Like, to me, that seems like a very similar projection. Jauan Jennings, Michael Pittman, they're similar players. They kind of do the same thing. Michael Pittman on a little bit worse of an offense, but Jennings could get early season production. That to me seems like the correct price for him. But Michael Pittman's like the 80th player off the board. Or the 85th, 90th player off the board, potentially.
Michael Pittman's free. It's like, okay, he breaks his back. Like we talked about that all season. Like, dude, when's he going to go on IR? When's he going to go on IR? When's he going to go on IR? People know he was hurt, and yet they're still letting him drop. I mean, where was he last year? A round 3, round 4 pick?
Yeah, he wasn't. I don't think he was hurt going into the year. I think he got hurt a couple weeks into the season.
He did. I'm basically saying, like, for a guy that we were drafting confidently round 3, round 4 last year, we're getting a round 8, round 9 price tag because people can't contextualize that he was hurt.
Michael Pittman is exactly the player every year that his price is wrong. He's always either overvalued or undervalued. He's never appropriately valued. Last year's way overvalued. A couple of years ago when Matt Ryan got there, way overvalued. He was like a 2-3 turn pick that year. And then what was it, two years ago? He was like a 7th rounder and everybody was drafting him like crazy. And he ended up being a great pick in 2023. And I think the same is going to happen this year. I think people draft him in the 8th round, 9th round, and then he's going to end up finishing as wide receiver 27 and be like a really productive pick at his selection. Him and Downs will ping pong weeks, and I'll have him stacked up with Daniel Jones, and I'll feel very good about that. So yeah, I just don't get it with Jennings to put a bow on this conversation. Let's talk about DJ Moore, who's the final guy that we got to talk about. I mean, it's not surprising. We're talking about a lot of receivers in this video on Underdog as well.
Very similar case to the one you just made of Jennings. It's just when I look at DJ Moore, yes, the Bears are an offense I want to be exposed to. I'll talk about, the fact that maybe you should just take the syrup instead of the pancakes and just take Caleb Williams because there's so many Chicago weapons that you may as well just take the quarterback that benefits from all of them. But to me, specifically with DJ Moore, 41st overall, wide receiver 23, the vibes in Chicago right now for DJ Moore just feel so weird. I mean, you got Ben Johnson already on record calling him out for bad body language. Moore himself mentions Chicago Sun-Times reported this, that the passing distribution may not lean his way like he did in the last couple. Quote from DJ Moore himself in terms of individual goals for the season. Right now, I don't have goals because I'm still learning everything, and I don't even know if I'm going to touch the ball as much as I did in some years or if I'm going to be used the same way. That came out of DJ Moore's mouth himself. And that's the guy that we're taking right now as the 41st overall player. To me, when I'm looking at it, yes, I think Moore is a talented player. Like, I think he's a legitimate top 25 level wide receiver talent in the league. Don't get me wrong. But his play dropped off dramatically in 2024. Bears had significant target competition in both rounds 1 and 2 of the NFL draft this year, on top of last year's 9th overall pick, Rome Odunze, potentially taking a step up in year 2. DJ Moore last year had 4 more targets and 2 more receptions in 2024 than he did in 2023, yet produced 400 less receiving yards and 2 less receiving touchdowns. The market is treating DJ Moore like the clear number 1 wide receiver in Chicago right now. But to me, this Chicago pass game room is just so much more ambiguous than the market's currently making it out to be. Like I said, I alluded to it. The answer to me, instead of having to pick and choose who's going to be the number 1 pancake that you choose here, just take the syrup, take Caleb Williams later on. On top of that, if I am going to take my Chicago Bears weapons, I'd rather get Rome Odunze 20 picks cheaper. I'd rather get Luther Burden 65 picks cheaper, Colson Loveland 80 picks cheaper. Why would I ever spend 41st overall on DJ Moore when I am unsure if he's even going to be the number 1 on this team?
Yeah, and you're speaking specifically to underdog prices. Rome Odunze's 37 picks cheaper on Sleeper than DJ Moore, which I'm not taking Odunze on underdog because he goes around Godwin and Olave and Judy and those guys, but he goes after those guys in sleeper leagues. So I'm actually comfortable taking him at that point in time. This to me is absurd, man. Like, this price tag.
Makes no sense.
DJ Moore is, okay, you want to take a similar projection? 27-year-old, 28-year-old receiver, established guy. Take Cortland Sutton or DK Metcalf instead. They're going to get more target volume. If you want to take a different projection than DJ Moore, not like one of those guys, take the upside swing. You know who goes 1 pick ahead of DJ Moore on Sleeper right now?
I'm scared to ask.
Rasheed Rice goes 1 pick ahead of him.
Why would you ever take DJ Moore over Rasheed Rice? I get Rasheed Rice goes higher, but like, their ADP's close enough that I'm sure there have been people on the clock thinking, I could take Rasheed Rice here, but you know what I'm going to do instead? I'm going to take DJ Moore.
Travis Hunter goes after him too. And Devontae Smith. Like, again, if you want to take I feel good about this projection, this guy's been productive for a long time, take DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton. If you want to take a breakout candidate type of guy, or, a guy that's a very good number 2 like Devontae Smith, Travis Hunter, or Rasheed Rice, the, upside swing, there's just way better options on the board than DJ Moore. Like, I don't feel like I hate DJ Moore. Like, I have him ranked at wide receiver 33, but he goes wide receiver 23. And he also is I have him at 61 overall and he goes at 41. So I'm like, I don't feel like I dislike the guy. I don't want to draft him at that price tag. It's just way too high. I have people who go in the 6th, 7th round, like Olave and Godwin and stuff. I have them ranked straight up over DJ Moore.
Yeah, and if you see the best ball rankings over on Flock Fantasy, the experts agree on this too. His expert consensus ranking is at 60.25 with that 41.2 ADP
Like
on Underdog.
exactly where I have him ranked.
Yeah, and I have him a little bit lower. I have him 70th overall simply because, I mean, I know this is going to sound like a hot take. Maybe I should save this hot take for later in the offseason, but I have Roma Dunze one spot higher. To me, I would much rather bet on last year's 9th overall pick taking a step up with a structured offense than the guy who literally got 400 less yards efficient on more targets last year.
Yeah, I think at cost I'm there. I'm probably not there straight up, but definitely at cost I would rather have Odunze. And I've been playing the Chicago Bears wide receiver core and tight end core and passing game in general through the cheap options. And that usually means that I'm drafting Burden, Loveland, and Swift and Caleb Williams sometimes too, versus even drafting Odunze. Because like I said, on Underdog, Odunze goes right around Olave, Judy, and Godwin, who I'm just not really drafting him over at that point in time. But maybe I should get a little bit more exposure to Odunze in my Underdog drafts. But yeah, like a lot of these guys, a lot of it's price related. So again, we don't hate the player, we hate the price. If DJ Moore was a 7th round pick, I'd probably be screaming for us to draft him right now. It's just he's a early 4th round pick or a late 3rd round pick. Like that's just too high.
It's like this is literally where his cost was last year, no, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe a half round cheaper than what he was last year.
I think he was like a 35th overall, 36th overall type of pick last year.
And last year he was coming off a 1,300 yard year with Justin Fields, and he was getting the #1 pick overall added to his offense.
Yeah. No, he had a better projection last year for sure. We had a rookie receiver coming in. We didn't have Burden there. It was like
no Loveland.
It was just Komet. Like it's definitely a worse projection this year. Even if you like DJ Moore and you just love this offense and want pieces of it, if you love this offense and love pieces of it, you should probably just take the cheap options, like we just said, because there is no law saying DJ Moore is the #1 here. There's no law saying it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. At the end of the day, like you said, I want pieces of this Bears offense. I want to be exposed because I believe in Caleb. I believe in Ben Johnson, but like there's just so much overconfidence right now on the market. Like, oh yeah, DJ Moore's going to be the one and everybody else is going to follow.
I want him to get traded, to be honest.
If he gets traded, obviously we can relook at this conversation. But I mean, if he's going to be on this team, he should not be going 41.
No, send him to Denver, Arizona, man. They could use him a lot more than what the Bears are going to be using him for. Let's get the young guys all in the field together at the same time, learn the young guy mistakes and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, those are players we are not drafting. Again, most of this was related to Underdog ADP, but we tried to weave in some kind of season-long redraft takes as well. For those of you guys that do want all of our best ball rankings, redraft rankings, all that good stuff, head on over to to Flock Fantasy to get our rankings. Use the promo code FSE for a 7-day free trial to check out everything that we got going on the site right now. We got trade calculator for those of you guys that are getting into the redraft season. You can use our redraft trade calculator. You can use our dynasty stuff, obviously, if you guys are playing dynasty. And again, take some of this advice in action. You want to be like, holy crap, DJ Moore's going at 41 overall. These guys on Underdog have no idea what they're doing. Well, you should go draft some teams then, because there are some exploitable ADPs right now. George Kittle at 50 overall being one of the most exploitable ones on the board. And you can head on over there to sign up by using the promo code FSE. You'll get up to $1,000 in bonus funds on the site. And you'll get a gimme pick if you guys want to make some picks for the final games of the NBA finals here. Hopefully the Thunder can wrap it up and we can get Hamilton, Ontario's finest, bringing home an NBA title.
Let's get it, man. Hey, shout out Shea, man. If he goes on and has a regular season MVP, finals MVP, championship year, like you're literally talking about one of the greatest seasons of all time from a player. Like,
yeah, and probably one of the greatest Canadian players of all time. He might already be there, but definitely one of the cementing himself as the new Steve Nash of this era kind of thing.
Not the glaze, but I mean, the upside here is you're looking at a top 3 shooting guard of all time.
Okay. Well, I mean, he is a free throw merchant, so I'm sure people will talk about that in the comments. But again, if you guys enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe. We'll be back later this week with some more dynasty stuff, a couple best ball drafts, and some redraft content later in the week as well. So with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.